People die, people grow old and people grow beards and people cry, cause people don't know from where the evil appears, but people try. It's just the evil severe and no one seems to know the reason why we're here. Everybody's just walking around this giant sphere, picking fights with each other and buying beer, watching television then dying of fear. Terrorism's on the television yet again. People can't just see that we the people need to change. People always like to blame the leaders, but it's us, we're the people that we need to blame.
This is so exciting.
Need to do this clacker.
Oh.
So that sound, and I can line the two of them up.
I've always wanted Hollywood. Here it is.
Here we are in on Tipperary Lane. So the idea behind this, or what I was going to say to you earlier, is I feel like we could end up, this could be 6 hours long.
Okay.
Because to try and untangle the web of how we ended up at this stage where we're sitting talking about this, from the madness that our lives had been to a certain point. So
well, I'm going to Switzerland tomorrow.
Right.
So I have to get a flight tomorrow at 1 o'clock from Dublin. So that's as long as you know that.
So you don't have 6 hours. So I think it will be multi-part. We have to kick it off with where probably the madness started to unravel, which was suicide. So I was looking this morning just for some numbers from 2000 to 2017. There's been 4,476 suicides in Northern Ireland. That number is continuing to rise. There's approximately 3,000 per year. When I was looking at that number, Granda was obviously one of them. In that 2000 to 2017, he was the day before my birthday, the day after, 21st of January 2021. So your journey that's, probably should introduce ourselves.
I was just going to say that. Who are these people? Who are they? Who's this woman?
So first edition of Mark Toner podcast.
Yes.
You're my auntie, friend, supporter, million other things. So I am a CrossFit affiliate owner, which is sort of my main passion. And so that's fitness, health, and everything in that regard. This is another venture. I'm in the barbering game too as well. So it's fun. Yeah. So who are you? What do you do?
Well, my name is Deirdre Maguire, and I am a mind wellness expert. And
just keep going, me to you. We'll forget about the video.
Okay, I am a mind wellness expert, and I am very good at what I do. People come from all over the world.
See, up till December last year, I would have been like, you are. And now I'm like, fuck, she is.
Well, I just booked
we'll get into.
2 people coming from California. Just booked yesterday to come and spend 5 days with me in Newcastle County down Northern Ireland. And today I just have a life beyond my wildest dreams. This is just so exciting for me to come and spend time with you and do this, whatever it is. Yeah. Have this fun, connect with people. But it wasn't always like that.
Yeah.
I'm very good at what I do because I had to get good. Yeah. Because my life was in the toilet. My best coping skills were overeating, overworking, over drinking, over relationshiping, if you could call it that.
Turn this way a wee touch, just so you're straight into the mic. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, I'm just going to, I don't want to, okay.
Go for it.
So, today I'm writing my 3rd book. I'm in the process of creating my Powerhouse Apiece self-mastery system. It's an 90-day online program. And it is what I call the stress solution, because I know I have a solution for people.
That you do.
I am, among other things, I happen to be your aunt. And today I believe it's all divinely synchronated, and there are no mistakes, and it all happened the way it's supposed to happen. but I have a capacity for happiness today.
Yeah.
That I thought that I didn't even know existed. Actually,
Yeah.
I didn't even know it existed. And I have daily practices. I have, before I came here this morning, I have written up my gratitudes. I know that gratitude.
See, that's the thing, like even jumping in there, and this is why I find this is powerful to talk to my generation, being 32. I have done the same stuff this morning. So I've jumped up, I've ice bathed, I've meditated, and I've done my journal, although my journal was literally do a world-class podcast, so we'll see how this goes. But when I'm hearing that stuff, I'll get probably deeper into where my shit went wrong, but if I was hearing that last year, I'd be like, what is this bullshit? Like, who does this? Like, this is for older people, or this is sort of some form of witchcraft where these daily practices, for me, it was go hard in the gym, get up, balls to the wall in the gym, which sort of was how I was doing everything in life, just go balls to the wall.
Yeah.
So sorry, I'll let you continue, but that's an interesting part, just that how something that I could see that you'd been doing over years and that you'd been telling me to do, I was never able to allow myself the freedom to be able to do it or to take the benefits from it.
So I'll finish kind of like the introduction, because then it'll help you to understand where I'm coming from.
Yep.
I'm 63, and I've never been older, I've never been fitter, and I've never been happier. And when I say it wasn't always like that, part of what brings us together, that would be of interest to people, I believe, is the suicide of my father and your grandfather. Mm-hmm. I loved him. We all loved him very much. He was an amazing man. He was very successful. He had a family who loved him. I'm the eldest of 5 children. He had children who loved him, grandchildren who loved him, a wife who loved him, a community who loved him. But he couldn't stay. He couldn't stay here because even though he had so much success on so many levels, his best coping skill for his emotions was to take his own life. He had hurts and pains inside him that he didn't know how to deal with. And the other part, so that's one part of my life. And the other part of my life is that I have had cancer. And I've been on that journey. And that's the biggie, when you think, oh my God, this is the end. And when I was diagnosed with the cancer, the biggest thing about it wasn't that I was going to die at, 56. It wasn't that I was going to die. It was like I hadn't bloody lived. Yep. I mean, this can't happen. Hold on a wee minute. I was still playing about with it. Yep. I had gone down the route of 12-step recovery because of my father's drinking. Before he killed himself, one of his best coping skills was over alcohol use. Yeah. And through the pain of watching my father self-destruct in front of me, I was seeking answers. The pain, what I say today is the pain pushes till the vision pulls. So the pain is pushing you. So that your equivalent of that is balls to the wall. I'll keep driving, I'll keep pushing, I'll keep pushing. So it sustains you for a certain amount of time, and you've had a certain amount of success in your life, but it doesn't last forever. Yeah. Eventually you meet your own Waterloo, and that's what happened to me.
It's a hard front to keep up almost.
It's a lot of work. A lot of work. And so for me, I found 12-step recovery, and that kind of opened the door. There were other people who felt the same things that I felt. I couldn't believe it. The first time I went to a meeting, an Al-Anon meeting, which is for family and friends of alcohol abusers.
So if we just backtrack a little on that, so prior to that, so the drinking for Granda had got to the stage where you needed an out because
I couldn't cope with it anymore.
Yeah, so essentially you were in a situation that you couldn't control, and then 2, that you had to start seeking, like the story goes, that you had to try and get him to go to stuff. Yeah. So let's go into it. Let's
okay. So well, if you want that story, that part of it, okay.
This is part 1 of 50.
Okay.
So
picture my life at that point. I had all the outside trappings. I had an education. I had an honours degree. I had travelled the world. I had been an air hostess. I had been married to a very good man. And I was married for 7 years, and I couldn't stay there because it didn't work, because actually nothing was working. And actually at that point I was using alcohol too, but I was getting up and going to work. And at this point, what I now know is emotional family dynamics. Yep. And I was qualified as a teacher, but I did that for a while, but I ended up back in the family business. My parents owned a furniture retail outlet. And when I reflect on it now, I know that the unfinished emotional business inside me was what was driving me, even though I didn't know it. And that's where I ended up back in the family, on the family merry-go-round. And I was working.
That's the part that I, like in the past, so I suppose 8 months since I had my massive breakdown was...
breakthrough. Your breakdowns, your breakthrough.
Is just understanding that like this web that you're tangled in is massive, and it's so deep, and it's not something that you're gonna break out of overnight. It's a process, it's work, and as soon as you feel like you take 3 steps forward, something pulls you back in, and it's a constant, which is why you do the morning practices to stay centered. But sorry, continue. So,
well, it's why I teach what I teach now, and that's the exciting thing about it, because it's not woo-woo, it's actually a science, but we'll get to that.
Yeah.
It is actually the science. That's what I posted a blog this morning.
8 months ago, it was woo-woo to me, and you were
I know.
lunatic, but we'll get to that.
The weird auntie that I love.
So
we'll
you're in this madness of the alcohol. I'd like to get into that a bit. So what does that look like? So when did you become aware of it?
Well, no, that's an interesting question.
And it's also a big topic, because I feel like, and this is part of my sort of passion around this stemming from Granda, is that not everybody, it's wrong, but a massive percentage of the population in Ireland, Northern Ireland, abuse it, in the sense that, and I was doing it last year as well, and for the previous years, where it was something that you'd done that related to relaxing. So you done it every weekend. So then it had that power over you that...
Well, it's a tradition.
It's tied up.
Tribal tradition.
It's tied up in who we are. But to say, like, I've been obviously looking deep inside and trying to see, and I would now classify myself, even though it wasn't crazy amounts, but it was a functional alcoholic in the sense that you needed it to relax. It was the only, and it's everything we've grew up in, and it's everything that we've seen around us. Like it was on TV recently when someone won a golf competition, and they're all laughing about how mangled they're going to get the next night. And it's mad that it's so ingrained in society in that way.
To the point that you feel out of it if you're not.
You feel completely out of it. And I mean, I went deep into it. This podcast will develop, and I'll talk deep about the use of drugs and alcohol. And like, I mean, I'm going all in, because that's the only way to be truly honest about it.
Saves lives.
But it's that web that, like, a lot of us are tangled up in, where it's constantly there, and it's promoted, and it's a business, and it's constantly driven down your throat, to the extent where my granddad, your dad, ends up, now not indirectly or whatever, but ends up going off a bridge, which we'll get to. But sorry, so if we cut this back, so the web then of what your day looked like and when this alcohol became a problem.
So, it's our national identity.
Yeah,
Irish people are known for, we're the happy drunks. And we've got one of the highest suicide rates in the world. And
it always stuck out with me when I read Roy Keane's book from 10 years ago. And he was saying about Irish showing up to the World Cup. And he had came from Manchester United. So he had played at the top level of professional football. Mm-hmm. And when this was the time that he left Saipan, and he was sent home from the World Cup squad, and he got there, and there was stones on the pitch that they were supposed to be training on before they go and play in the biggest competition in football. Mm-hmm. So he had came from like Alex Ferguson's world, where he was world class, and he was from a world class team, and he showed up, and Ireland training pitch has stones on it, and I remember him writing in his book at the time, the Irish people, they show up, have the party, and then they piss off before the competition gets serious. When the Brazil and the Portuguese and stuff get into it, the Spanish and French and whatever, and that really bugged him because he was there to win because he came from Manchester United and he was a winner.
He had a different mindset.
He had a different mindset, and I believe that mindset is definitely changing in Ireland. There's like, look at the golfers, look at Conor McGregor, look at that. There's like a rise in that, but it always sort of stuck out with me, and it was like, even for a lot of my life, I felt a lot of shame being Irish, having that time in Australia and stuff, and you. I mean, I don't know if this was us indirectly or whatever, but we, like, you were seen as the piss up boys, the party culture. There's the Irish, they're fucking haters. And it always sort of annoyed me because it was like, well, we're so much more than that. But I feel like there's maybe not enough people speaking out or stepping out or being able to even articulate it and talk about what the fuck's the problem here. What is happening? So back to this story. So whenever did you start to...
So I'm just, when you asked me that, where my mind went to, because the mind always gives you, and it's really interesting that when I was at university at NUU, the New University of Ulster, and I remember, I can't remember the circumstances, but I remember feeling like my life was unmanageable. I was in a crisis, put it like that, and there was some kind of crisis, and it was so bad that I went to a lecturer that I really liked, and I felt like he understood me, and I couldn't even tell you what I started to say to him, but I started to tell him something, and then I just remember that shutdown. I just remember
from the lecturer.
No, me. I just went.
Yeah.
No,
that's the fear.
No. And
so you're like 20, university?
Yeah.
Right.
And so then fast forward.
But rewind. So something before that made you realise, shit, there's something not right here at home, or there's something not right.
There was something that I needed to get out of me. That's the way it felt. It felt like there was something that needed to come out. But the what I now know is the misguided loyalty to a family system. There was no one more loyal to me than me to my family. And we were trained in it. We were trained. Don't speak, don't talk. If your name's in the Morning Observer, don't come home. And what I really want to qualify this before we go any further is that, I am dedicating the launch of my new system to my parents, for whom I am so proud. I am so proud of my parents. Yep. So I need to qualify this by the fact that these were their best coping skills. It's not a blame game. It's not a judgment game. It's...
even getting into this podcast, that's my initial concern. Now, when we start to, probably not today, but when we start to talk about the newborn baby and the systems being downloaded and the understanding of, so the baby comes into the world a perfect human, and then are downloaded the good and the bad from both parents. The initial thing is, Jesus, I don't want to, I come from the exact same point of view of you. It's like, my mom and dad are my best friends. You don't want to upset the cart, but when you can really take that 3,000 30,000 don't go 3, go 30,000. The view we talk about is going above it, where you're 30,000 feet above and you're able to see everything, and then it takes a while to get that freedom and to get that understanding, and then whenever you get that, you can really start to see the world and go, shit, everybody is just a download of what came before them, the good and the bad. Nobody is trying to do anybody wrong. Things that happen to them may relate to them doing things wrong to people, but everybody just wants to be loved. And when you really break that down, you either live in love or you live in fear, and it's as black and white as that. And the things that are driving the fear is like where these problems start to lie, because when it's driven from the love, everybody's happy and every day feels like how most of our days are feeling now.
Yeah.
But when it's driven from that fear place, that's where people are out to get at each other, or arguments happen, or that end of it stems, which is the environment that we came from, essentially. So whenever you're going back again, whenever you're speaking to this lecture or whatever, then you're aware that there's something not quite right in the dynamic of drinking, or...
No, it wasn't. I don't
Right.
even remember what it was.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you know, from the science point of view, they've studied it. There's the hierarchy of needs.
Yep.
And so your bottom one is survival. So everything you do when you are on alert
Yeah.
and you're in survival mode, everything is driven by that. So where I see that we are today is that we've passed that, and now we're on to the next one, where we can actually look out over the landscape
Right.
and see that actually we're out of the trench, the war's over,
Yeah.
and it's good. We're good to go. It's it's Disneyland.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
there's lots of fun. So anyway, going back, I remember that one time when whatever it was that happened, and he made arrangements to see me, and we'll talk about this. And between the time where I had gone, there's something wrong and I need to talk to you, and the day later when it was 2:00 and I was to meet him in the lecture theatre and we were going to have a chat, shut down again. It's shut down. And subsequently, when it got a bit worse or a bit better, because I broke through and I made the decision to take some action and do something, and I went to this week-long residential thing, and I always remember it said, written above on the thing, it said, "Don't break the no-talk rule." And I saw it and I went, oh my God, I have been living by that rule for years. We have a saying in our family, don't even tell yourself. Don't even tell yourself. I have heard that, you know, it's keep this mad merry-go-round. Keep it going all the time. And the emotional...
But not intentionally, like
No.
not like that sounds like it's some sort of evil conspire
Yes.
who's saying, let's keep this crazy shit going. No, that's the fear, because everybody's
Survival.
it's everybody's afraid of hurting anybody else or stepping out, and you're constantly just going through each day. It's rolling through, and then it involves the drinking in the evening or whatever.
But again, we know the science of it now. I mean, we're tribal. So you need to belong to your tribe. Whatever, that's what gangs are.
Yeah.
Everybody needs a tribe, whether it's the IRA, the UDA, the UVF, the gang, the knife gangs in England. Everybody needs a tribe.
Yeah.
And you need your tribe. So you abide by the rules of your tribe, because if you leave the tribe, as I did, ultimately, if you leave the tribe, which is what you're kind of doing today on some level, because you're stepping out. Those were the words you used to me before we started. I'm stepping out here.
Yeah.
And this is what you're doing. And what's your fear? If I leave the tribe, I'll die.
Yeah. As soon as you get over that fear, then you're ready to leave
So
tribes
now-
all over the place. But
So now what we're doing is now what you've learned and what I learned and I taught you then is to watch it. That's what the 30,000 feet is, that you're actually learning to watch your mind. Technically, it's called metacognition.
Right.
Above the mind. Well, that's the way ahead of things.
Yeah.
You know, when you are able to see what you're doing,
Yeah.
when you're actually watching the mind, then you are in the driver's seat of your life.
Right.
It may not always feel like it, but actually. So anyway, back to that one day, then I shut down. I would say it took me another 10 years. I went through a marriage. I went through a big relationship breakup that nearly killed me. It broke my heart. That's what I felt at the time. My life deteriorated. I used alcohol at that stage. I just was directionless.
And in what way? That's a part I find interesting. So in what way did you use alcohol? Like,
I got drunk. I numbed out.
This is the thing I see a lot with my generation, is that like it's actually cool. I remember when it was cool. I thought I was fucking cool because I was getting hammered on a Saturday night.
I remember walking into the Anchor bar, which is our local bar here, and we live at the foot of the Mournes, the Mourne Mountains, and there's a big, a lot of people do hill walking, and I distinctly remember, going into
these crazy bastards,
going into the Anchor and looking at these dipsticks with these 3/4 shorts on, and the woolly hats and the rucksacks, hello, and heading up the mountain. And I thought I was the coolest thing on. I couldn't wait to get into the anchor, to get into the crack, to get into the smoke. We smoked then, and I smoked as well. Get into the smoke and the crack and that feeling of just
freedom,
total. Wipe that other stuff out and that total freedom. Now, having said that, at the beginning of this podcast, I said I'm going to Switzerland tomorrow. Guess where I'm going?
Walking.
Hill walking. I'm one of the dipsticks now.
In the same way, like growing up with like that, it's cool to drink type feeling. It was like even we went to Ibiza for years, and it was drink, ecstasy every night, just partying. And at the time, it was like a badge of honor. Who could be the messiest? Like this was some sort of cool thing that like who could go out and get the most fucked up, and then he's cool because he can get he gets the most fucked up most weeks.
He's the funniest. He's the best at crack because he doesn't know where he is and he's lying on his back.
And that made it good crack. So when we think then, so you were working in J&K and the family business. The family business, and Granda's life was starting to unravel around you from the times. Yeah. It became obvious. It became obvious to me anyway, as sort of being like 8, 9, 10, that sort of age. When funny looking back actually, because obviously you reflect a lot. I remember that he used to take everybody for deliveries, and it was hard not to recognize how popular he was. But there was this random. But I didn't really realise it was a pub till I was about 20. But there was this random house in the middle of nowhere that he used to go for deliveries and then pull into this pub.
Where was it?
Like outside Castlewellan, like towards Ballinhinch.
All right.
Yeah.
Right.
And we used to be in the back of the car, and he'd come out and hand you crisps in, and you'd sit there, or occasionally he'd bring you in. And I suppose being young, being the whole happy days, we're getting crisps and Coke in the car, but not actually realising that he was going in and drinking whiskey. And then
in for a shot.
And getting back into the car. And obviously back then it was easier to drink and drive, or there was less likeliness of being caught. And then as this, even from my eyes as a 10-year-old, started to build up, I remember him being drunk, like I remember Mum having to take him home from places, like him being found up the street, and you're in amongst this madness, but you're not even really aware of what's at my age anyway. You're obviously more aware that this is alcohol, but I'm 9 or 10. I don't know what the fuck's wrong with Granda.
No, you see, this is your normal. So that was normal for you.
Yeah.
So you normalise it.
Right. Yeah.
You actually normalise it. You go, this is what you do, because when we come into the world, you know. Adults when a baby is born, adults are the equivalent of 12-foot giants. Yeah. So you're vulnerable. You're looking at these adults, and so they are your survival. They feed you, they clothe you, so you look to them.
It's like the Lion King.
So it's Lion King. So if you see them drinking, then okay, that's what we do.
Yeah.
At an unconscious level.
This is only something recently I've broke away from. This, because part of my journey, I mean, like I was in the thick of this 12 months ago, in some form still, and that's the one I've only really just separated in my mind and now got away from, that alcohol isn't a form of relaxing. But yeah, so the life of Granda was starting to unravel then, I remember that, and then there's the night, I suppose.
For me, what was coming into my mind when you were saying that, first of all, one thing I have to say to you is that when you're talking like that still touches my heart. That is still my father, and it still triggers some emotions. Same. It's interesting.
Yeah.
And
even though the work that you do now is about freeing that emotion, and you know, I can pull you out of that trance now because you've given me that skill, where it's like, we'll stop the trance and let's continue knowing what we know now and what we're trying to help people with.
Okay, so I think it's very, from my experience with this,
it's not easy.
When people just clarify that word trance, because people think trance is hypnotists.
Right. But trance to me was Amsterdam Arena, 30,000 people, 5 E's.
So So a trance, when we talk about it, when we're talking about a trance here, what we're talking about is that the mind goes back to its unconscious references. That so Mark starts to talk about my father, and back in my data, using the analogy of a computer. Yep. So the data that's in there are all my life experiences, and they're all there. And when he starts to talk like that, then something is triggered back there. That little girl, this is my father, this is my 12-foot giant, this is my life giver. And
your inspiration in a lot of ways.
Oh, I'm very proud of my father. I love him very much. And so, and this is the thing. I mean, if Hitler was your dad, you'd still love him. Because of the biological, neurological, emotional dynamics that when you come into the world, they are your first reference. There's a classic example of, the baby giraffe in the jungle, and the mummy giraffe dies, and the baby giraffe bonds to the jeep because the jeep is on and it's heated. And it starts, but we naturally do this. We naturally bond to whoever is there. You've seen the things, the YouTube videos where, the duck is looking after the cat, or the cat's looking after the duck, or whatever, because it's a natural instinct.
I never understood your love for them videos. I remember a period where you were distinctly into that. And I was like, what the fuck is this crazy bitch watching? Knowing what I know now, that's what you were doing, was looking at this newfound information that's changing the world, and you were going, there's an example where I was going, that fucking another likes watching ducks and cats.
Give me shit, whatever, whatever mood altering I can get.
And what's his obsession with ducks, looking after cats or whatever? But I completely get it.
Maybe it was a wee bit too cryptic for you, but and that's what our work is about.
Yeah.
We're passionate about, simplifying this, making it clear.
Yeah.
We've been there, so you don't have to.
Yeah.
That's my intention with this work, is to fast track others, to show them that there is another way.
Definitely fast track in the same way, I suppose, and we relate a lot of this back to CrossFit and the fitness that we do. My journey through fitness is now able to fast track your fitness, where in the year or whatever where you've really got into it hard, that you can say I'm fitter or whatever. So I'm using my life experience with fitness and fast tracking your journey in the same way. We're looking to take the information that we have found through suicide and fast track it for other people, to say it doesn't actually have to be shit. It doesn't have to be as shit as our lives, where it can actually be done if you face up to the stuff. If you seek the help, you can clear out a lot of.
Yeah, and my tagline is, there's no need to die.
Right.
You don't need to die.
Yeah.
You do not. I work now, today, in my day-to-day living, when I see clients, I work with suicidal people. And what's so amazing to me is that when they get to me, they're suicidal, and in 5 hours of work, they're like, seriously, what was I even thinking about? They have the, there you go.
Yeah.
So this is the exciting part. So anyway,
so the part, and I find this even this morning when I was getting up, and I was thinking, we're meeting at 8 o'clock in the morning to talk about suicide, to talk about me losing my granda at 13 and you losing your father, and yet we're excited about it. So this is definitely stuff we're going to get into deeper as we do more of these, and we'll take notes and we'll see what we need to cover next. But that's, or
invite people to what do they want to know, ask questions, what do you want us to answer?
But so then, well, okay. So the night itself. So I remember was it a Sunday?
Yes.
Yeah. I remember the phone.
Your birthday was on Saturday.
My birthday was on Saturday, which we believe is the reason why he didn't do it, or at least that's what Mum had thought. Who knows? We don't know what other people are thinking. But I remember him Granda phoning here.
Interesting. I never heard that before.
Right, go.
There you go.
Go
That's
go.
Go ahead.
Maybe in our family dynamic.
There you go.
Whatever.
I never heard that until now.
But so my birthday's the 20th of January 1987. This happened on the 21st of January 2001. Yeah, it did.
I know. That I do know.
Right. So I remember the phone call, him phoning here, and when I started to dissect this years later in my head, I know now that he was drunk. But when I was 13, I was like, "There's Grand on the phone. I want him off the phone because he's doing all that. Where are you?" Blah,
Were you
blah.
talking to him?
Yeah, I was speaking to him. and it was, "Where's your mum?" And it was, "Grandad's drunk again, get him off the phone." Like, that was my reaction.
Was that on the Saturday or the Sunday?
That was on the Sunday.
On the Sunday
On the
after your
Sunday,
birthday?
on the Sunday evening. So there's
Oh, really?
So
were you talking to him that night?
I was talking to him that
I
evening.
didn't know that.
So, so I get on, Grandad's drunk, blah blah blah, and move on. And then I remember lying in bed in the Monday and thinking, Mum hasn't called us for school, and thinking this was fucking great. I remember checking my phone. Must have had a phone or whatever way I was checking the time, and it was 8:30, and I was like, "Well, we've missed the bus now anyway. Happy days."
So you knew nothing else?
So we knew nothing. So we were in bed. So then I think Mum and Dad, who are brilliant at this stuff together, they do it together type this
Good
stuff
team.
as if but a good team in that way. I remember them coming in and saying something grand as day. I just remember Mum and Dad being at the door or whatever. And obviously at 13, I didn't understand the alcohol because you're 13. I didn't understand what it did to you. I had no experience of it. I didn't understand why you would kill yourself. I felt pressures and stuff at that age. You're an 11 plus. Just out of that, I was into secondary school, but I understood pressure, but I had no understanding of why you would end your life. I'd never experienced it or seen it, or was any part of my sort of reality. I didn't understand death. We didn't have anyone even in our family die at that stage. And then, so essentially, Granda has committed suicide. Now, if you give your story of that Sunday or in the whatever, it would just be interesting to know.
So, just backing up a wee bit, like being the eldest of five, working in the family business, I saw my father physically every day. I spent every day with my father. I was living in Belfast, 30 miles away, so every evening I went home. And but I was the big fixer. I was the eldest. I was in charge. I took care of things, and I had been doing it for years. Okay, so Daddy's drinking was accelerating, and his life was becoming more and more unmanageable. And my job, I used to, when I worked in the shop, I was always trying to fix it for him. Always. I would set up scenarios to try and keep him sober, and eventually
Just making sure that we have everything set up here, but sorry, go on.
Okay, so just to put it all in context, my father wasn't the drunk in the street. My father was a very successful businessman. The business was running, a thriving business in the town.
Of which there were a few. Like I remember that era and being like, that's how I looked towards my granddad. Is like, he was a hard worker and he got shit done, and
and people looked up to him, and he was very kind. He was very generous. They ran a credit system in the business, so which allowed ordinary working class people to have decent furniture in their houses, and they paid in. And my father actually used work. In my mind, but that's a judgment. I'll let it go. He, just to set it in context of the kind of man that he was a big, I don't mean physically big, but he was a strong man, and he was a big character, and a lot of people admired him and looked up to him. So that's what it looked like on the outside. On the inside, I every day was about trying to manage this insanity, which I didn't know was insane. And that's just what I did. But then as that accelerated and I couldn't do it anymore, and my father said he would go to, he finally said he would go to an AA meeting. And now at this stage my father had been in the Downshire. He had, which is the local mental health facility. And for his 70th birthday, he actually was in the mental. So I had said, I can't do this anymore. He said he would go to AA. The day that he said that he would go to AA to a meeting, I was as high as if I was on heroin. It was such a hit to me. I went, oh my God, we're going to fix it. We're going to get this sorted. And so I phoned AA and I said, I want you to get me a good meeting. Every time I think back on that now, phoning this guy Pat, and he said, come up to the Lisburn Road in Belfast. That'll be a good meeting. You know, what was that about? Always about trying to control things. And so he said, try and keep your father sober and we'll get him to meeting. Well, we took him to Belfast and he stopped to go to the toilet, which was code for slipping in, getting a shot. And but we got him to the meeting. And
like you were aware of that, like he was going in to get a shot.
No, I thought he was going to the toilet.
Yeah, it's funny how you can make it all okay in your head, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, exactly. Underneath it all, I probably didn't know he was. Yeah. And so anyway, we got to Belfast, and Pat, the guy, young guy, very well dressed, came down to meet me at the entrance to the meeting. And this is how good I was. He said, "Okay, Deirdre, I'll see you." And I went, No, I'm going in. I need to go in. And he said, "What are you talking about? This is not for you, Deirdre." I went, "Yeah, but I need to go in because you need to know the truth. Because I know what he'll tell you, but I'm going to tell you the truth." And when I look back on that now and think how far gone, what I now know is codependence, where you get your sense of yourself from another person, that I was so like inextricably linked in this web with my father that I was going to go in and tell the truth because I needed to control everything. And this was my big chance to sort this thing out once and for all. After all, I'd been a fixer for years.
And the naivety of thinking, because I've had similar situations where you'll be driving home in the car and like you said before, it'll be the Waltons and
it'll get
driving
sorted
home with a happy music on. It'll be like the end of a movie where the sun's setting and you'll live happily ever after.
Well, Pat said, I said, "How long is this going to take?" And he said, the meeting's an hour and a half. And I went, and I remember walking away thinking, imagine this is all going to be sorted out in an hour and a half. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I actually had that thought. Yeah. So what happened was Pat said to me, "You go up the road and get a cup of tea and come back here." So that's what I did. And my brother Paul was with me and we sat up the road and I was as high. I had an emotional, physical high in my body because this was going to get it sorted. That's the power of the mind. And so anyway, came back down, started to rain, came back down, and I'll never forget it because it's one of those pivotal moments in my life where my father was shaking. The meeting was over, and my father was shaking hands with everybody, and I thought, oh my God, he's done a number on them because, very clever, he's a very astute man, and he's done a number on them, and they don't know the truth. So Daddy walked down.
And you had seen examples of this in the way that he had been drinking over the years with Nanny and with yous, like almost tricks to be able to go and drink.
What I call it now is emotional manipulation.
Right, cool. Yep.
I became an expert. I then myself became an expert in emotional manipulation. That's how I thought how the world works, because I had watched it and seen it, where you manipulate people to get them to do what you want them to do. And so
when really you just send it out to the universe and it all comes back to you. But that's number 5.
So anyway, so I remember him walking out past me, and as if I wasn't there, my father, and he walked on. He had no coat on him. He was in his shirt sleeves, and Pat came down, and and he said, "Well, Deirdre," and I used to never be able to tell this without crying. Because he would say, "Deirdre, I think your daddy has a wee bit to go yet before he's finished." And that was just like, I can't do this anymore. I cannot live this life anymore. At this stage, I don't know, I was 40 odd. I cannot do this anymore. And so then Pat started to tell me about his life. And he said, "Deirdre, I woke up on my 3rd suicide attempt in London. And guess what? My mother was not at the end of the bed." So I was the equivalent of his mother, because his mother was caretaking him and I was taking care of my father. And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Because my mother had found Al-Anon, which is a 12-step recovery program." He said to me, "Deirdre," he says, "never mind your dad. What about you?" And I went, Me? There's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with me. If he would quit drinking, I'd be okay. And then when he told me his story, and then at the very end of it, this is what he said to me. He said he stopped drinking, and it was a very, very funny story. The way every second word was fuck. He said, you know, it was so funny the way he told the story. But what he said to me at the end of it was, today, he says, I am happily married to a beautiful woman. I have a beautiful son. I have a gorgeous house. The mother that I tortured all those years, I take my son to visit her every Saturday. But he said, you see, if I lost all of that, Deirdre, I would still have myself. Now, I'll tell you, Mark, I had no clue what the hell he meant. But something deeply, deeply did.
Mm-hmm.
Consciously, I didn't know what he was talking about, but my soul knew in that moment. And something, I changed the direction of my life in that moment. Even though I didn't understand what he meant consciously.
Through a conversation with another man.
Through something in me went, okay. I really do believe my soul cried out and went, oh my God, here we go.
Yeah.
So I said, okay. So I followed his instructions. And he said to me he said, go to Al-Anon, start looking after yourself. And he said, there are two things are going to happen. Your father's going to drive down the road. You'll be driving down your road and your father will say, thanks very much. I'll do it myself the next time. And God help those people in there. All of which happened. We got into the car. We were driving home. The first thing my father said was, thanks very much to both of you for taking me here. I will go myself the next time. Which he did actually, but he didn't stay in it. And the other thing he said was, God help those idiots in there.
And that probably reconfirmed.
That sealed the deal for me.
Sealed the deal. You're
that
right.
sealed the deal. I went,
Deirdre.
that's it. I'm getting off the merry-go-round. And there were two things that happened after that. One, you see, when you're in...
I'll stop you. It wasn't that simple.
Oh, no. Oh, no. That was just the start.
Yeah, that's why this is going to be 6 hours and not one.
That was just the start. But the truth about it is, what I always come back to is, we are fast-tracking. I did all that so you don't have to.
Yeah.
That was my contribution into the tribal pot, the planet.
Yeah.
So I went through it. My father went through what he went through.
Yeah.
So I could have a better life.
Which is why we're sitting here today, because we're doing all this. This would never have happened, and the work that you did that is directly related to me, and even my partner Leah, and the massive changes. I mean, that's been my evidence, because I did the work and then I got to see the work. So this is all stemmed from that, which is the exciting part, which is why we're sitting here at 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning, able to talk about suicide, where we both lost, and we both see it as something that became a positive through.
Totally reframed it.
Cool.
Yeah.
So Pat drive home.
So we're driving home, and Daddy says exactly what Pat, and in my mind I thought, okay, but what I now know from all that I've studied is the family, I remember saying this to you about the emotional merry-go-round. You're on the merry-go-round. I use this with clients all the time. So you're on the merry-go-round. You don't even know you're on it. But somewhere at that point, or some point in your life, you go, I'm getting off this. I'm getting off this merry-go-round. I was on it
till last November, last December. So that's really real to me. And now I can see that you were doing that, constantly looking out for me. And it took me from I was 13, from Granda died, till I was 32. It took me 19 years to get off the merry-go-round.
Yeah, but I was grooming you.
For this road.
Well, I didn't.
The beauty of it is that, and again, we'll get all into this, but that's my journey. And if I had have asked for help sooner, hey, I could have been off the merry-go-round a lot sooner. But another day.
But so that's why somebody's listening to this podcast. And
exactly.
Going, what?
What the fuck
what
are they talking about?
Shit.
Or the big one for me. My one was, that shit that Deirdre does, it won't work for me. That shit that person does, it won't work for me, because I'm different and I'm more broken and my life's more fucked up in different twisted ways.
And do you know that every single client, without exception, says that? Everybody thinks it doesn't work for me. And that's what I say. Well, if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for me either.
Right, so
one of the other things that I remember about that night is there were the remnants that were still there. Even though I had that, okay, I'm done. And I had actually been carrying a list of the Al-Anon meetings, where I don't know where I got it, in my handbag for 2 years. And so they dropped me. I lived in Belfast at the time, so Paul, my brother, and Daddy dropped me off, and they went on home. So it took them about 45 minutes to get home. And I went into the house, and obviously my mind's spinning. I'm like, oh my God. And I started looking at the meetings, and I thought, okay, there's one tomorrow, I'm going to it. But still, I made the phone call to my brother, and I said, where's Daddy? And that was the other part. And my brother said to me, where do you think he is, Deirdre? Where do you think, because he was obviously at his end of his tether too, where do you think he is, Deirdre? And somewhere in my heart, in the deepest recesses, I thought maybe he went home. Maybe he didn't go to the pub. Because in my mind, well, I thought he had been to a meeting. Actually, the story unfolds. And then I phoned my sister. I phoned Denise, your mum, and I said to her, I'm done. I'm telling you this now.
Powerful Denise Toner.
I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm finished. I'm finished with this carry on. I'm going to a meeting. And so that's what I did. And the next day I went back up to Belfast. I found an adult child of alcoholic Al-Anon meeting. I arrived in late. I was 5 minutes late.
Wouldn't be like you.
Wouldn't be like me. And I sat down. Well, that's another story. And I sat down, and I remember just crying. I just remember hearing the words, and I don't know what the words were. Couldn't tell you. Yeah. But whatever they were, they touched that soul thing again, and I just cried. And somebody on one side held my hand, and the person on the other side gave me a hanky, a tissue. And I just cried and cried and cried. And I was crying for 40 years of shit that I had been trying to make my life manageable, and I couldn't. And that was me hooked.
Sounds like me over the last 8 months.
And that began the journey, my 12-step journey. And I was in Al-Anon for 10 years.
Right.
It absolutely.
I remember you going to that.
Oh, and then what did I do? Total fixer. Eldest of
Bring
5.
Everyone.
Bring the world. And I bought 5 books, and I went to my sister Denise, I went to Brian, I went to Paul, I went to all of them, and I offered them the books, to which each and every one of them, without exception, went, are you serious? And our Deirdre's lost the plot, completely lost the plot. And so I left the tribe. We talk about the tribal. I was leaving the tribe, and it was scary. And I remember one of my best friends said to me at the time, she was my drinking buddy, and we used to go drinking on a Friday night. And I remember her saying to me, you're no crack anymore, which is the Irish translation for those who are globally watching this, means you're no fun anymore. You're
and
no
then
crack.
That's a thing you're ashamed of. When I was stepping away from that world and I was getting deeper into the fitness, and I did do both at the same time, then you became ashamed that you were no crack anymore. I'm not a mad bastard anymore.
No, you're not Irish. You've lost your identity.
Yeah.
So now I know your whole identity, which I teach this to people. Your identity is your sense of who you are based on the outside environment. Your identity comes from, I'm Irish, I'm Catholic, I'm Toner, I'm Mark, I'm Deirdre. All of that is all your identity, which is all from the outside environment. Where you are now and where we are, where I am, is on the inside, on my inside environment. So I'm in there. I'm not Deirdre, I'm not Irish, I'm not Catholic, I'm not.
And the beauty of that is you can't be touched. Roy Jones Jr. song, you can't be touched, and that's how that feels when you turn it inner. You have control of everything, even if external things are happening, like the situation of Granda around you. Whenever you really understand that and get in deep enough, you can't be touched by what's going on external.
So one of the most pivotal books that I ever read is a book called Man's Search for Meaning.
I was just about to say, between the stimulus and the response, there is a gap.
Oh my God, I've done my job well.
I was nearly going to say that.
Between the stimulus and the response, there is a gap. Herein lies our freedom. So just to fill in on, Viktor Frankl was an Austrian psychotherapist who was Jewish, and he was imprisoned by the Germans, and they took everything. They took his wife, they took his kids, they did all kinds of things, but they kept him alive. And he studied and watched the people, and that's where he learned it. And I mean, you can look him up on YouTube. He only, obviously it was during the Second World War, so he lived there. I don't know how long he lived, but there are YouTube videos on him. And this is what he noticed.
Start making any parts up now. We don't really know that much about him, but we know the stimulus and the response.
Oh no, I do know. I can see the video in my mind. I can see watching the video. But he noticed the behaviour of people. He had the unique opportunity in his life to observe and notice that what people were doing on the inside affected how those who lived. Even in the most awful circumstances. And like he said things like, think about it, barefoot, starving, cold, in the middle of the snow.
And still you have a choice.
You don't die. People didn't die. It wasn't the outside.
Yeah.
There were people who died and people who didn't die. So why did some people die and some people didn't die? Was it the external or was it actually the internal? Was it what they were doing in their mind? That's where the golden nugget is.
Yeah.
That's where, Willy Wonka's chocolate factory really is.
And essentially what he's saying is you have a choice between the stimulus, what happens to you outside. That gap is the freedom of choice, and in that choice you can choose. Now,
when somebody's, cutting you up in the traffic or somebody...
Fucking hard to make that choice.
You still know. Yeah. So is that episode 6? That's what I teach today, and I show people how you have a fork in the road and you have a choice, and then the science of it. Yeah. That literally when you're on one side, you're producing chemicals in your body that cause you stress, and when
you're getting ahead of yourself, relax.
Okay, so back to, I'm at my first Al-Anon meeting, and so that's where my life started to change. So I had some kind of coping skills to deal with the insanity that was the emotional breakdown of my father. And so 3 years later, my father was dead. But by the time he was dead, I had enough emotional coping skills to help me to deal with it. So for me then...
You had enough to help you to deal with it. It was still tragic and horrible and everything that you would imagine it to be.
Oh my God. My darling father. I loved my father so much. And what happened to me was, it was your birthday. So this is my end of the story.
The part I want to hear, yeah.
Okay, so I was living in Belfast, 30 miles away, and travelling up and down, commuting to my business, which was with my father. And as I say, my job was to help him with the business. But underneath it all, what I was actually doing was trying to save him. And so that weekend, the weekend of your birthday, it was so on the Friday, my father said to me, he said to me at lunchtime or in the afternoon, he said to me in the shop, we're both in the shop working, and he said, come down for your tea. Excuse me. He said, it's interesting how the body does this. I know that this is because we're talking about emotions.
30,000 feet, and I suppose my limited understanding of this is what's happening with Deirdre. Even with that, is that it's difficult to speak about, and I've seen a lot of this as well with Leah. It's difficult to speak about because you're going back in your mind because you're retelling the story, so you're going back to the memory, and then it becomes alive in your body, which is what's happening there. So if I can use my limited understanding of these skills and pull you out of it, so we're able to talk about it. Let's reframe and go.
So so now I said earlier on about what is a trance. Mm-hmm. This is what a trance looks like. Yeah, that I'm actually, what I'm actually doing is the making inside is more today.
Real. You're making the suicide happen right now, and we'll get into this deeper as this develops further. But you're making that same feeling happen in your body right now. And you can control whether that happens or not.
And actually, the unconscious mind doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's made up. This is too technical. So that's why there's a part of my body actually feels that I'm right back there. Yeah, okay. So that's what I'm doing to myself. But I've made the decision. I'm consciously doing this now. So I'm still able to watch it.
Yep.
And but the body is starting. That's actually ultimately I had cancer. That's where it was. It was in my throat because I couldn't speak up. So anyway, so where are we? Yeah, so it's Friday. My father says, "Come down for your tea," which is for your supper. Because I am aware of global. So tea is not a cup of tea. It's come down for something to eat at 5 o'clock.
That microphone's not good.
Come down at 5 o'clock. And I really didn't want to, because I was actually going to a rehearsal for a choral society that I was in that evening with the Glee Singers. I was going to a choral society rehearsal. And I went,
like, what the fuck's a choral society? We just go up and look at rocks?
We're going to sing CHORAL. And so there's always that.
Times have changed.
I don't want to do this. I want to do what I want to do, but I feel I need to take care of you. Yeah. Like, that would all happen in a New York nanosecond in my mind. And I said, "Oh, Daddy, I don't want to." "Oh, come down. And so I said, okay, I'll come down later. So actually, in actual fact, what happened, I actually forgot. I had to deliver a piece of furniture to a customer in my car, and I forgot all about it. And I went round to my sister-in-law's, to Grania's, and we went to the rehearsal and did that. And so that was okay. And then I never saw my father alive again.
And just even on that, my instant thing, and for anybody who would be listening, is I would imagine, and this probably happens a lot to people who don't have the skills that we now have, that you might have for a time carried a feeling of, if I had went, things would have been different.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, cool.
I remember coming in here into Denise about 3 weeks after Daddy was dead with all my coping skills.
Yeah.
And
thinking it was your fault in some way.
And she said, "What's wrong?" And I went, "That's my fault. It's all my fault. It was all my fault that my father was dead."
Which is the natural human reaction, because if you don't have the awareness or the understanding that we do now, that's what you would go to. Any parent who loses a son, or in any way, they'll always feel like they could have done things differently.
If only I'd gone that evening. If only. I mean, I've made videos, lots of work about this, but so the lowest point is actually the turning point. But we're not there yet. We're still at the lowest point. Yeah. So that was the Friday evening. And then I actually went to Donegal on Saturday for the weekend. And I came back on the Sunday night, and my boyfriend had just dropped me off, and I got a phone call. And it was from my sister-in-law. And she said, 9 o'clock on a Sunday night, and she said, "Deirdre, it's your daddy." And I said, "Oh, God." I said, "What is he at? What now? What now?" And I, to this day, will never understand why I said it, but I just said, "He's not dead, is he?" And she said, "Actually, he is." And I was like, "What?" And immediately at that point, I just went, "No, he's not. No, he's not." And she said, "He's in the river. He went into the river." And I just thought, what? What are you talking about? I'll deal with this. I'll sort it, because that's who I was. I was the fixer.
Yeah.
So I phoned my boyfriend and I said, "You need to come back, because I need to go to Newcastle." I knew I couldn't drive. I knew that much. Yeah. But in my mind, I thought, right, I'll go down and get this sorted. So I called Martin, and he came back, and we drove to Newcastle. And I remember driving the 30-mile journey and coming to coming over the hill at Clough. And it was about, so it's about 7 miles from home. And I thought, it started to come. I thought, oh my God, this is what's really happening. And so then I got to Newcastle, and as we were driving into the town, the hearse was with the coffin, which was my father, passed at just on the Dundrum Road, and I completely lost it at that point.
Right. So he was in the hearse at this stage?
Yes.
Yeah.
So what had actually happened was my father had gone into a river. He had taken a cement block, and which he had in the trunk of the boot of the car, and he had a rope, and he wrapped the rope around the block, and he wrapped the rope around his neck, and he wrapped it around his wrists.
Keep hitting the microphone.
And he weighted himself down, and went into 6 feet of water. It wasn't
And
deep.
even the story is, I know Paul's story as well, your brother, and it's so much deeper than that, where the block was in the car for a few days and people had said to Paul he's going to do it.
So I can tell you that story because
I just think that when we're talking about it, I just think the reality of it is massively important to be able for people to visualize how shit your life can get, how bad Granda's life must have got to be able to have a block in the back of your car and to be thinking about this for an amount of time, even though you're still drinking and there's this chaos going around.
Well, he had actually his drinking had slowed down in the last 2 weeks, and I now know this because I've worked with so many suicidal people, and so I understand the mindset. Because suicide, when you're not suicidal, suicide is so awful. Yeah. But when you are suicidal, the mind, it's good. You're good. You're good. I've got to get out. Yeah. I have got it's a relief. I've got to get out. So Daddy died on the 21st of January, and the Christmas before it, imagine the other Christmases were insane. It was all around drink. But that one was one of the best because Daddy had actually made the decision before then, because he actually, looking at it retrospectively, he took my boyfriend and had a drive in the car with him and had a discussion with him to take care of Deirdre. So he was setting it all up because he was getting ready to go, and he was at last, his mind had some kind of peace around it. So his drinking, that Christmas we had was great. He was in great form. And so what happened was, on this Saturday morning, I was in Donegal, but Paul, my brother, was working in the shop. It was Mark's birthday, and Mummy and Daddy were going up to Mark's coming up here because it was the child's birthday. And there was my brother was in the shop at work, and there was a man who was friendly with my father. He had been in his class in school, and this man was at Mass. He had gone to church in the morning, and he had to come out of it. And he came up to the shop, and he said to my brother, I was in Mass there, and I had to come out of it because your father told me that he had a breeze block, which is the concrete block, and a rope in the boot of his car, and that he was going to kill himself. Mm-hmm. And for those of you who don't know us, we live in a very small community. And so this man couldn't stay in Mass. He just said, I have to tell you this. So my brother said, okay, thanks for that. And the guy went. So then it's Saturday morning. My father pulls up in the car with my mum outside the shop. And he says to Paul, come on, jump in the car and come with us. We're going up. It's Mark's birthday. We're going to go up to Denise's. And my brother, knowing what he knew, just looked at my father, but he didn't say anything to him. He just went round to the back of the car, opened the boot of the car, looked in it, saw it, slammed it shut, and went back and just stared at my father like, no, I'm not going with you. I know what you're at. But he didn't say anything to him. Yeah. So
it's almost like a plot from a movie, isn't it? Like
it's unbelievable.
When you recreate, yeah.
But that was the emotional dynamics. There's no communication. Instead of my brother saying, "What are you doing?" Yeah. It wasn't like that. That's not how we operated. So because we always emotional manipulation all the time. That's what we learned. So Daddy went on, and they came up here. I don't remember. I don't know what you saw.
I remember Dad saying, my dad recently, that day Dad offered him a drink and he didn't take a drink, and Dad said that was mad. Like, Granda didn't take a drink. Yeah. Which to me, like, I suppose, like, as one step further away. So he's your father and my Granda. That part interests me so much about the mind, about that. What is going on?
Well, that's what I subsequently found out, that this is how the mind works. That the suicide. I mean, I talked recently to a mother who adored two different mothers. Both of them had children, 6-year-olds and a 3-year-old, and they adored them. So I'm saying, so they're telling me their plan. You know, they had written a note, and one of them was going to put the rope up over, and the other one was going to take pills. And I said, so in that moment, where were your children? Where were your children when you were thinking that? Well, and the one said, well, they all say this, the people will be better off without me. And the other thing that was so interesting, this woman is telling me in a very logical, unemotional way that her son slept with her. And she said, I was going to leave the note, but you know what stopped me was he would waken up in the morning and I would be cold, and he would, that wouldn't be pleasant for him. Seriously. Like, where is the mind in that moment? So this is what drives my passion now, that when you understand how the mind works, you don't need to get to that place. And secondly, if that is happening to you, come out of it. You're in a trance. Stop it. Yeah. You can change the direction of your life. So anyway,
even just on that, like, I suppose from the outside looking in, being a CrossFit affiliate owner, having loads of members that look up towards you, and being in a lot of ways, I mean, very confident and very sort of driven and business orientated, or whatever that I could be described as being, but yet being completely broken, and the suicidal thoughts that I was having last year, and I suppose the message is that if you don't know what the fuck's going on in anybody's head, you truly don't. No. And people can have such a weird, strange way of doing life and in their mind that I have no access to how you're doing it, and you have no access to how I'm doing it. But the work that you do is the key to unlocking it for me personally, or for you personally. Absolutely,
to set you free. And when we we're learning more and more about this every day, that, when you say that, you're fit, you're driven, you're successful, those are all the outside environment. It's all the outside environment. And the inside is what counts. The inside is what's, and that's why the world is upending at the minute. Yeah. It's definitely the world order is breaking down.
Yeah.
The world is having its lowest point, which is going to be its turning point.
Because so many people are having their lowest
because it's
points.
Not sustainable. Yeah. It's not it's the
consumer.
The consumer's the outside environment, and it's not what drives you. It's Viktor Frankl. It's every time. It's your inner environment, and I'm guilty. I'll hold my hand up and say, I want this, I want that, I want the other, because the outside things we think are
going to fulfill you.
Yeah, and they're not. And I like getting my nails done. I like getting my hair done. I like this.
Yeah,
I
love
love
a certain
CrossFit.
Element of looking good and feeling good, but for me, even I thought for most of the past decade that CrossFit was the answer, and fuck everything else. That's it. It's most definitely the most optimum way to live and be healthy. Don't get me wrong there.
Absolutely.
By far.
My little legs are sore today because what you put me through
but
last
it's not
night,
the answer. I seen one recently where it said, it was an Instagram post, and it said, like, you can have the best workout routine, you can have an 8-pack, you can be in the best shape ever, blah blah blah, but if you're not dealing with that inner voice in your head, then eventually you're going to break down. Eventually it's going to all...
Well, CrossFit can be the high side of addiction. There's the high side and the low side of addiction. CrossFit, put anything in there. Put CEO of a very successful company. Mm-hmm. Put anything in there. It can be the high side of addiction. And you think, and then the low side is the drunk in the street. They're both doing the same thing. Yeah. They're mood altering to stay away from the inner part.
CrossFit has went that way. It's become this thing that is relentless, and because of the demands of the top end of the sport and people feeling that that's where their aspirations should lie, it's completely, and I often describe it as people have replaced the pub with CrossFit now, which can be equally as destructive to the body. Again, let's go back to so much we want to talk about, but let's go back to this night. So.
Well, the exciting thing is we're sitting at the same table.
Yeah.
You're the physical man, I'm the mental, and we're putting it together. That's what this is about.
That's the interesting part.
So the breeze block. The Saturday. Yeah. So the Saturday, and the man says to my brother, and then you're saying that actually Daddy's demeanour was slightly different because he didn't take a drink that day.
And so then that evening, my brother he was finishing work, and my father said to him, my brother was going for a drink. He was going for a pint across the road, as we do. That's what we do. We're Irish. He went for a pint.
At the end of the day.
And my father said to him, if you're going up home, my brother would have phoned his wife, Tracy. Don't phone her, phone me, and I'll take you up home. Now, that's very different. My father would have been drunk on a Saturday night, but he wasn't drinking that day. And so whatever was going on in his mind. And so that's what happened. My brother went and had a couple of pints, and my father took him home. And at that point then my brother had a couple of drinks in him, so he was able to say to him, he says, this man came and told me.
Which is completely the wrong environment to do it. And I see that so much now where people speak to their partners when they've had a few drinks. I'll bring up the big thing that's bugging the two of us now.
You're scared, you see. Alcohol's your best coping skill.
Because when you're alcohol, you're numb to that part of the fear. And then that's why everyone, we all did it. You need 10 pints before you ask a girl out. Or whatever.
Yeah.
So sorry, go on.
So anyway, so my brother said to my father, I know what's in the boot of the car. I know what you're doing. I know what you're doing. I know the block. I know the rope. I know it. And my father just laughed. He says, I just said that. I said, don't pay any attention to that. I'm fine. And so that was okay. And then the next day, Sunday, they went to church. My mother and father went to church. My brother went to church. I'm in Donegal, and my father started drinking again. He went to visit. He went to visit a friend who my father didn't have very many close friends. He knew a lot of people. He was high profile in our community, but he didn't have a lot of close friends. And this man was a very close friend to him. And this man was dying of cancer. And he was actually a policeman. He was in the Royal in a hospital. And so my father went to visit him, and he came home. I know from other people that he was drinking that day. Right. And he phoned here. And the first phone call was the funny phone call. Oh, that house is like the White House. Left a message on the answer machine. You couldn't get in there.
That message, yeah.
And
it was long. I remember it being long.
I don't remember much about that one, but then Denise said then there was another phone call, and the tone was completely different. Where are you? Where's your mother? And what he did was he also phoned my brother, Paul, and he said to Paul, you know that thing that I said I was going to do? Well, I'm going to do it. And my brother said to him, oh, fuck off. My brother loved him so. Imagine my brother loved him so, as we all did, but he was particularly close to him, and those were his last words to him. Yeah. And because we were at the end of our tether. This was how we lived every day. It was an absolute insanity. We were in the mad merry-go-round of insanity. It was Sunday night. He's at home with his family, and here we go again. So this is what happened. Yeah. So his wife Tracy said to him, maybe he should go down. And he went, my God. He had his slippers on. He got into the car. He drove down, and my father's car was at the river, and my father was in the river. Yeah. And my father was dead, and my brother phoned his brother, Brian, my brother, and they got a ladder, and Denise and your mum, she was there, and
so they all seen it.
They all saw it, and I didn't. And it's really interesting the way the mind works.
The voice thing there again as well.
Yes.
Later on we can talk about that, but yeah, that's the part of it. I mean, being 13 and trying to understand why your grand is in a river with a breeze block, and even though, like, even like, I suppose we look back on on family and stuff, and I mean, we have a lot of people that you're inspired by. I'm obviously inspired by my parents and inspired by my grandparents as well. I always thought, what a fucking crazy way to go about it. Like, even more, like, I suppose the form of hanging yourself is more popular, is a terrible term to use in that, but I'd never heard of such a, like, that way, which I still find, like, deeply
I know you think that he would have taken
in a strange way.
you think that if it was one of the questions you'd like to ask, why did you do it that way, Dad? Why did you not take a bottle of whiskey and a load of pills and fall asleep?
It seems like a pretty, not, how can you say one's more extreme than the other? It's like saying, would you rather freeze to death or...
Well, you wouldn't shoot yourself, would you?
Burn. Well, you would imagine if, not that in any way this is even worth talking about, but like that could be a struggle. The
reason that we are talking about it is because these are the questions. You're saying,
these are the questions as a 14, 15-year-old. I'm thinking, like, I suppose I can't think that I would have knew about any suicide. So, I mean, and
no.
So, I mean, we'll get to the days after or whatever, but I don't know, moving past that, but I just always find it.
But these are the things that obsess you. Like, I remember being really, really pissed off that I wasn't there.
Yeah.
I really resented the fact that Paul and Brian and Denise were there and I wasn't.
And I remember the story that we heard was, I do vaguely remember there being some sort of commotion outside our house with cars and leaving, but we still went to sleep and I still woke up thinking, fuck, I don't have to go to school today because Mum and Dad have slept in. But
when you think it's the mind that we're talking about.
Of Brian and Paul, and the police were like, he can't be taken out or whatever because it becomes a crime scene. And so Granda's in the river, which is 10 foot deep, would you say? Not even, probably?
6.
And so 6, so the height of me deep, with a block round his neck, with a rope tied round it, and then they're not allowed in, supposedly, and they get a ladder and say, as I would as well, fuck it, I'm getting my dad out of there.
Which they did, yeah.
Which they did. So that's how it happened, and then so from
and it's interesting when because we're talking about the mind, like the wee things that go through your head, like the woman who I delivered the furniture to. Remember back on the Friday, I didn't go for my tea with my father.
Yeah.
Well, who did I blame?
The woman who fucking ordered the furniture.
That woman hadn't ordered that furniture. Yeah. If that woman, every time I saw that woman for years after it, every time I'd look at her and I think, you bloody ordered that furniture and I didn't see my dad. That is what the mind does.
And what we're saying is with the work that you do, that people will live the rest of their life and see that woman. And what does that, I know then from my area of expertise, what does that transpire into? Chronic disease, because you carry that pain, cancer. Because you carry that feeling and you hold that resentment, which is completely wrong, but you don't know what to do with it because you don't know the answer, because you're not a mind expert, in the same way that if this work was around, Granda might have got help and might have got the freedom that you give me, but it didn't. This is new. This is new stuff to be talking about.
So that's why we're sitting here, because we want to bring it mainstream. It has to come mainstream. It has to go
mainstream. Yeah. So what could happen for your life, for talk's sake, if you didn't explore and find this work and do everything that you did, is you could have carried that resentment to the point that you then get cancer from it, and the cancer causes you to die, and that's the end of your life, carried from a resentment from something that actually you know the answer of how you can change the mind. It's mind blowing. And yet it's not easy to explain. It'll take multiple podcasts to analyse and look at it. It's so funny.
I thought I was coming here for a 10-minute podcast.
No. Have you not watched Joe Rogan? No.
I did. I watched him this morning.
So the day then happens where, so Granda's dead, and then, like, for me, I remember it turning into a bit of a whirlwind. Then I have a vision of us being in the upstairs room in that house that became a sitting room. Around that time, it was the back.
Road?
Yeah, it was the back bedroom, and so I'm the eldest of all the grandkids.
Right.
So everybody being there, and so I'm the eldest, so I'm 13, 14, and nobody understands what the fuck's going on, because we have no understanding of even that Granda was sick, that he was abusing. So we're in this scenario going, what the fuck? And then, so there's the funeral and all that, and I don't think we need to get into that in too much detail. Somebody has passed. Then the things, and this, just when I was thinking about this morning and what we'd be talking about today, it came back to me, was the feeling of going back to school as the guy whose Granda had killed himself.
Okay.
And now I have the skills that I'll analyse that myself, and I'll work through that in 10 minutes. That will be sorted.
So,
But
so just right there, just because of what I do know, you're saying you'll analyse that? That's not what you're going to do, because people, the analysts...
Sorry.
You know what I'm saying?
Sorry, I'll let that
For
go.
all you analysts,
I was
you
an
don't
I
analyse.
was an analyst. I will let that go.
So he knows how, what you're saying is that you know how to change the pictures in your mind and release that and let the emotions that are attached to it go. That's really important.
So there was that at the time then for me was
it's
that...
funny that just came
that
up
just
now.
came this morning, which is interesting, and I think...
And where mind went to... One of my abiding memories that I have worked on, and there's still remnants of it, is Daddy sitting in the coffin and seeing the burn marks of the rope around his wrist. So what we're doing is live.
Yeah, you're making it up.
What we're doing live is showing you what the mind does, that we both know now. Immediately we caught it. You know, I saw a picture of my father's
When you have
wrist.
an image, you have the wrist. I don't remember going back to school, but I created this morning me on the bus and everybody looking, thinking. So obviously I had a feeling in there somewhere. And
you have a memory.
I have a memory, but that memory is actually connected to a feeling, because I can't actually create the picture because I don't remember. I made that part up. You know what I mean? The mind made up this picture of me getting onto the bus and everybody being, there's the guy whose granddad killed himself to feel ashamed about. I have that feeling, but I've just had to create that picture, which is...
That's very interesting, because
it gets
so
deeper
when you
again.
think, that you actually... So when you say you see... Do you see a picture of you sitting on the bus?
I do now. I couldn't tell you if that was definitively there until this morning, and I was maybe seeking...
So the feeling, the picture and the feeling is what you've held on to?
Yes.
So the feeling... And then the mind creates a picture to match the feeling, because actually you couldn't see yourself sitting on the bus.
That's exactly what happened.
You couldn't see yourself sitting on the bus.
But
the mind, you Googled the feeling.
Yeah.
Okay, so it went into the database and it said, oh, we've got this feeling here. So you pull up the feeling and the mind goes, well, there you go.
Boom.
We've made a picture for it.
So I watched a movie of it happening this morning, and that's the
that's
understanding the mind and how that works is incredible. So we're an hour and 26 minutes in. I reckon that's probably, we'll just conclude with this, because that's the start of the story then. So we've talked about the madness that had developed.
Set the context, the scene. We've set the scene.
Set the scene, and that's what's developed right up to the point that led to the suicide. And then from there, we will build on the next one about your work and where that's taken you. And then ultimately it'll be one after that, how my journey steps into that and that story.
That's exciting. But, well, it's for me, as to conclude it, the most important thing to know is you don't know yet how we got to where we are today, that's the cliffhanger. What the story is phenomenal, but Mark has to go to Australia. I have to get cancer. He has to be suicidal. All of that is to come. But the bottom line is, here we are sitting here today,
and it's a positive message we're trying to put out, and it's a feeling like you can't feel anything but love or happiness, even around something as devastating and as family wrecking as losing a loved one.
And actually, my mother died 5 months ago, and so that's another part of it. But comparing the two deaths, you watched me being able to emotionally deal with, shit happens. It's not like
You're gonna
you
die.
learn this stuff.
You're gonna die.
Well, you have to have a death strategy. I know that for sure, and that's maybe that podcast 7.
Right.
I have figured out the death strategy. But
I don't need that shit yet.
well, you've dealt with
I'm
it.
joking.
You've dealt with it. So once you dealt with it, it's like, okay, now that's taken care of. Now I can get on with my life because I know what I'm going to do. I know about death, and I figured out what'll happen or how I'll deal with death. It's not a big deal. I'll just do it. Like I've done everything else, I'll do it. I've done all of this, so death is just going to be another thing that I'll do. So meantime, I'll actually live.
Yeah.
I'll get on with my life when, and that's what this is about. That's what we're both passionate about. That's why we're both sitting here, because, there is absolutely, I don't know whether look at this or whatever, there is no need to die. That is my deepest passion for others, that you can have a life beyond your wildest dreams. You can't even begin to imagine.
Yeah. And you can feel amazing every single day. My life had completely spiraled to the point, I'm 32. I still live at home, technically. So I haven't got much, if you know what I mean. But yet, I'm an entrepreneur who technically has 4 businesses. And what that means is my life had spiraled into such a crazy place that it had got out of control in one way. And yet I had set it up with everything I wanted in another way. Mm-hmm. And that the mind was the thing in the middle that was causing the problem, that was causing the issues. And now every day, all I can relate things back to is the partying days. And you know what I'm going to say, because I've said it to you many times. I can only relate the feeling that I have every single day as being in the back room and shine with 5 E's in me. Now, knowing what I know now, and that ecstasy feeling is what I'm talking about, that was a terrible time, and it wasn't the way to be living, because you can actually have this feeling on a random Tuesday afternoon with a little bit of clarity of this work and a meditation and turning everything interior, and then you walk about, and that happens for me at times now where I'm driving about in the car and I'm like, I feel like I'm in a movie. I feel like I'm in this, like I could float, like I could levitate, that the world is this perfect place where everything goes right. And from coming, and I suppose it's stupid to relate it back to ecstasy, but that's the feeling as such.
It's healthy ecstasy. It's
exactly,
free ecstasy.
Exactly.
It's what
you don't lie in bed and feel like shit for 4 days after it.
It's life. That's what I say now to my clients is, my life force is my life source.
Yeah.
And I have it all inside me, and it's the real thing. It's the real ecstasy
real buzz.
of life.
Yeah, it's what I was chasing for 10 years in nightclubs, and then that lasts for 3 hours and isn't really that great anyway, because parts of it are good and the rest of it is absolutely terrible and destructive and makes you feel horrible. You can feel like that with just looking inside yourself, breathing and focusing on what is actually going on in your head.
Well, what I like, Mark, I used to watch videos on I remember looking at people meditating and thinking, oh, for God's sake, how do people even sit still? Yep. And meditation is not about sitting still. I know this for me. For me, meditation is being able to go inside, to do what we just did. Explain. Yeah, but what really turns me on more than anything else, and that's what my life is about now, is that the science of it. This is the informational age. It's out there on YouTube. That's what we'll get to, explaining exactly how the mind and body works, how it's a system, it's sequential, and it's simple. And that when you understand how the neurology and the biology of your emotions. If my father had known this, then he wouldn't have had to die. Yeah. But actually, he died that we might live.
Exactly.
And,
And the beauty of it all is, we'll conclude with this, is it's for everybody.
And it's free.
Boom. Job done. One in the books.
Yo.